police officer and for a year now.
And I'm a registered nurse in an emergency department, and I've been doing it now in the ER for about 7 months, but I've been a nurse for a little over 2 years. Unfortunately, I mean, in the emergency department, it's more kids once they've already attempted a suicide attempt, or if they've attempted to harm themselves, or they're making statements about it. We see them once they're already reached that point, unfortunately. So it's once a kid has already ingested pills or attempted something, strangulation wise, we've seen that. Anything that I've seen is usually within the range of like 12 to 16 is kind of like, I feel like the middle ground that, kids unfortunately do take the steps to end their lives. And most of it I've seen is through obtaining medication and taking medication and not knowing what the medication is. They'll take Tylenol and things like that, and Tylenol is one of the worst things that you can take on a large quantity because it's going to cause long-term effects where you'll live with liver failure for the rest of your life.
Mental health for us is a difficult, obviously it's a difficult situation, a slippery slope, because once they've gone through it once, they know things to say, and we have a very strict, they have to say they want to hurt themselves, they have to either make an act or have a plan put in place. It's very strict steps to be able to take action and actually put them on a mandatory hold. So it's kind of like once we get there, they'll retract their statements, or, oh, I was just kidding, I didn't want to do our act, I didn't have a plan, I was just mad at this person and texted them I wanted to kill myself and different things like that. So it kind of puts us in a tough position because obviously they have had thoughts, and who knows when we leave what they'll actually do. There's been calls where they say that we go there and then they say, well, I'm not going to do anything, and then later on they take the pills and try to do it, so then we go back, and it's kind of tough because you're there, and then like I said, you don't know what they're going to do after you leave, which is pretty much every call that we go on. We do have co-responders, which help a lot, and they have a lot of resources that we don't have. We don't really get trained too much on mental health because a lot of it is not technically criminal, unless they're homicidal is really the only criminal aspect of it. So we don't get a lot of training on it, but we have co-responders that are on pretty much all day with us that respond out and have a lot of resources. So a lot of times they don't want to talk to police because they think they'll get in trouble if they're on drugs or doing whatever. So they don't really like to talk to us. So we usually send them with the co-responder, or have the co-responder reach out and offer those services. Obviously, we need more training on it to help assess, because we have really no training on mental health except for, literally our questions are you going to kill yourself? Do you think of harming yourself or anyone else? Do you have a plan? That's pretty much the extent of everything.
And I've seen co-responders that do come, if an individual is suicidal, and I've seen it more with adults, but it comes into the fine line of parents being involved more so. With co-responders, I've seen it with adults. They come, if an individual is somewhere in a destination and then they're, in a car or something, then a co-responder will come out and be with that individual until they are in medical hands or in medical care to where they get the resources. And I haven't seen that as much, unfortunately, with kids because it's usually transferred onto parents. That's really hard because sometimes a kid's reason might be because of their parents, and having the parent take over the situation might not always be the best resource, but because they're a minor, that sometimes is the only option because they can't make those decisions for themselves. So I think that's kind of hard and a gap within our system that could use some attention and some help, but we can only do so much with kids as well because they're minors. So
a lot of situations I've seen is gender stuff and with kids, and then also just broken homes of parents just not being good people at all, and whether they have a lot going on and they just have disregarded the kid, or the kid stepping up to try to take care of the mom, or and it's just too much for a kid to handle is kind of where I've seen the most.
Before I worked in the emergency department, and even before I had my RN license, I had my LPN license, and I was able to work at a mental health facility. And they were some of still to this day, probably some of the nicest doctors that I've ever met, just because that's what they deal with on an everyday basis. That's just like in how they are as an individual. But they are full to the brim. Like every single time I was there, like it was months and months and months. Like you would have to wait 6 months to get an appointment with an outpatient psychologist. Like it would take forever. And that was one of the only facilities that could take patients. I mean, they just completely full. Like there's not a ton of resources or mental health facilities in this region. There was an individual that was there for I think about a week in the ER just because CPS could not find placement. They couldn't take the kid because the kid had gone back and forth, and it was just a really sad circumstance. And the kid was there for mental health issues, and we couldn't do anything for them anymore because they had been to so many facilities and the facilities were refusing them, but they were still a minor, so there was nowhere for this kid to go. And unfortunately, so many days had passed and we just essentially had to let the kid go. We couldn't hold the kid any longer. The CPS couldn't do anything for them. So it's a really sad circumstance, and I've seen it more than once, and I just don't think we have the capabilities anymore to handle it. Like they're either full or they're just non-existent.
Our co-responder will come and she'll talk to them, and then it's all like, oh, let me call and see if they have room. So I think a lot of even detox is always full. Like even if it's someone who's on a bender and they have those thoughts at that time, like even going to detox where she can keep in contact with them and try to give resources is sometimes full. And so it's you can go to the hospital by yourself or with the ambulance, and that's kind of the only option we have. And then they're there for a day or two, get some medication, and then they're...
Yeah, and I've definitely seen repeats, I guess. There's some individuals that you can come in, we ship them out, they go to a behavioral health facility, they're there for a week or two, they're good, then they come back. And it's just a continuous cycle. It does not change until either a suicide attempt, unfortunately, is successful, or sometimes, treatment does work and then they get out of that loop. But I've seen it on several occasions where a kid we know them, they come back, we do the same thing, and it's just over and over.
Only a couple of them, I think they're trying to get more that are able to put them on mandatory holds like we are. I think right now there's only one, but I think they're pushing to get more that are, because a lot of them won't talk to us, but then they'll talk to them, and so that they're able to actually get what the root of the problem is, and if they are having those thoughts, to actually be able to put them on hold, and they have all the resources that they have through their employer.
And it's very similar, unfortunately, to nursing homes. The people that are more in a poverty-stricken area and don't have the means get sent to the behavioral facilities that take the insurance that are for those individuals, and they're shittier facilities. They just run through the people. Where the people that have the money, and can buy themselves a fancy nursing home, can get the help that they need with a fancier behavioral health facility. And it all comes down to money.
Well, I think a big part of that is the fancier ones have less people than, the workers aren't overloaded with a crazy number of patients, where the more poverty ones are one person is in charge of 20 patients, and it's just they're doing as much as they can do, and they're just trying to help as many people as possible, but they don't have the time or the resources of people to kind of actually sit down and do that.
Yeah.
Kids that, I've dealt with not suicidal thoughts, but being kind of depressed for a little while. I think the biggest thing is whatever you're going through will pass. Mm-hmm. And as hard as it is, any little victory, I would say celebrate those. That's what helped me, was just, even if it's getting through the day, getting through the week, you deserve that time to yourself, and kind of use that to celebrate, however, what makes you happy, and just to get through the next week and just keep doing that and you'll build on it.